everybody. This is Yanik, and I work as a principal solution architect at Genentech. And for those who may not know who Genentech is, actually it's the founder of the biotech industry maybe around 45 years ago. Now being a member of Roche Group, actually Genentech has been pursuing groundbreaking science to discover and develop medicines for people who suffer from serious and life-threatening diseases. So like cancer, like multiple sclerosis and all that really not really fun, stuff. But our transformational discoveries also include the first targeted antibody for cancer and the first medicine for primary progressive multiple sclerosis. So we're really playing at the state of art here for giving or providing patients the medicine and the cure they need. And as part of Genentech, actually, my focus area as a solution architect is modern integration technologies and helping all these digital transformation initiatives pursue the right track and right architecture to enable their objectives. And as part of this, today I'm going to walk you also through a use case, a story that can also inspire some of you out there in terms of how we empowered a real-time enterprise with using event-driven architectures at Genentech. But before getting into that level of detail, I also want to revisit a little bit why we wanted to start with an event-driven architecture approach and why it matters. Honestly, if you look at last maybe 2 decades, maybe in the last decade more, majority of the companies are adopting this digital transformation programs like faster and more than ever before. And on one side, business wants this transformation because they need to create more responsiveness for their customers, for their ecosystem, for partner ecosystems. And they also want to be more agile to adapt market conditions, market changes, consider the pandemic situation, for instance. But at the same time, in order to achieve that, they also need to be more scalable and more resilient. On the other side, IT has been playing the role of supporting all these programs and initiatives for a while. But also in the last decade, I think IT transformed itself from being a support organization into an innovation center. And actually, we're walking hand in hand in this journey of digital transformation and modernization. And for modernization, for IT, that means actually establishing and benefiting from some of the principles like decoupled architecture, better persistence, immutability, or better scalability and high availability, or enabling real-time workflows and more automations. And think about also now AI taking its part in this whole journey. All of the architectural or let's say enterprise level concerns and requirements, this modernization effort is not an easy thing to achieve if you don't take into account all these different points of concerns and get the benefits out of these initiatives. That being said, I'm just going to give you a little bit details about one case study that tells exactly how we achieve some of these, let's say, important benefits by implementing a modern integration architecture. And of course, in part of this, we enabled an event-driven architecture and a solution in this case study. This is all about integrated customer experience. And what we mean by that is actually when we say customers at Genentech, we typically talk about our patients and their caregivers or healthcare partners. As a result, when we say integrated customer experience, it's actually becoming truly a patient-centric organization. Before this initiative, before this integrated customer experience program, we had already established or achieved some of the milestones, if you will, and like being an agile company, for instance, or reorganizing or realigning on this focus area. But we had to take next step to transform the business and the IT to establish the final, transformation. And as a result, you can quickly imagine, as people from IT here can easily, imagine that we are coming with a big legacy. And remember, I said 45 years of history for the company. So we had a lot of stuff in our current architecture as legacy. But in order to map, the new architecture, we also identified 4 pillars of this program like interacting with each other and resolving the complexity of this integrated customer experience program. One of them is, of course, getting the voice of the customer and listening to our customers, in this case, patients and HCPs mostly, and then building the journey one more time, maybe based on what we hear from them, and using the right technology so that we could enable new processes and orchestrate them to give the results back to our patients in the way they need and at the right time they need it. Again, I think the most important thing is at the right time with the right context. Like I said, we inherited a very old legacy application ecosystem in this project to transform. And honestly spoken, it's not only about having various applications in the landscape and maybe thinking about replatforming, but also we had to tackle with a lot of integration challenges that these platforms already exposing. And as an integration architect in this project, I had to focus really how I could overcome these issues and even bring more onto the table in terms of being future-proof and making sure that the program would continuously succeed in this journey. And as a result, we had to analyze a lot of different integration design patterns, data exchange patterns. But when we look at this old architecture or the as-is before transformation, it's easy to see that this is actually a highly complex spaghetti of integrations. Most of them are point-to-point. Some of them are using legacy backbone like a legacy ESP, a lot of batch-oriented and file-based integrations, nothing much in real time. And actually, that's one of the things we mostly heard from the business. Hey, we need real-time data from the field, from the patients, or from the HCPs or HCOs. When I say HCP, I'm talking about healthcare providers and healthcare organizations. Sorry about my abbreviations. We're very much used to these abbreviations in our terms, but I'm just going with those. So whenever an HCP, for instance, changes licensing information or affiliation, this information is available only maybe 2 days later, 3 days later, or was available in that sense in the previous architecture. So we focus on these real business needs while we were also transforming this architecture to the next one. So I think spaghetti of integration is a very common problem, but also within these integrations, maybe you already had some real-time data exchange patterns. So it's not only about data, having data in the real time, but also making sure that you manage the whole life cycle of this data. You're able to understand and reuse what you build. That's also something we took into account while we were building the next level architecture in this program. And as a result, after a long period of assessment and analysis, of course, we did a lot of replatform assessment in terms of the applications landscape we have. For instance, we moved most of these on-prem applications in the previous picture you have seen into cloud or SaaS-based applications, modern applications. And as a result, also we defined omni-channel CRM, for instance, instead of having a single channel in the past, we defined a new customer master, again in the cloud, capturing HCP, HCO, and payer and location information, for instance, and mastering this information for the rest of the company. But at the same time, we decided to take into account, how these applications would talk to each other in this new cloud-native environments. That's why we also decided to embrace cloud-based integration capabilities like iPaaS solutions or cloud-based PubSub solutions. Honestly, we didn't have to think about which solution to go with because at Roche, I think Mulesoft and Solace was already established enterprise standards. So we only need to think about how we could leverage these platforms in the best way we could to enable this new architecture. And that's why you see in the middle of everything or at this layer, integration now being API-led and event-driven. And from the colors, maybe you can also imagine if you're a Solace user or a Mulesoft user, you would immediately recognize that these are corresponding to those platforms. But in order to give you a better insight what that really means for the whole architecture, this is very high level, of course, as you can see. I'll zoom into a little bit how this integration layer looks like and what exactly the use cases we captured and we enabled. So you see multiple layers of integration capabilities or design patterns happening here. But before going into that kind of technical discussion, I also want to give you a little bit of example why events matter in this whole composition. Think about one agent or a representative walking into a hospital and just maybe coming across a doctor that she already knew, and then realized that the information about her affiliation changed or licensing has been changed, updated, whatever. Then she immediately takes out her laptop or a mobile phone and updates that information on on the CRM system in the cloud. But that information is not exactly good enough to propagate to the rest of the platforms, but also is required by, for instance, the brand.com websites, because maybe around the same time another patient is applying for a program, a foundation program, for instance, to get a support from Genentech for a specific modification and maybe affiliated with this doctor. So in this case, that information in our system is stale, but the information is just right now updated. And if we could have all this data being synchronized across different applications around the same time in near real time, then this patient's enrollment experience would be perfect. Otherwise, it would be really taking longer time to establish the right accurate information for this onboarding process on the other side. As a result, we identified many use cases like this, like some business event happening in one place, but that business event and the content related to that event is actually needs to be synchronized with the rest of the application landscape in this new architecture. That's why we decided, okay, if this is the case, then we should go with an event-driven architecture, define those critical business events in this whole landscape, and capture them through an event brokering mechanism, thanks to Solace, of course, and then to provide the right mechanisms to propagate this information between these applications as publishers and subscribers. That's why we identified these layers of integration, because having only one broker is not good enough when you see some applications that cannot really transform or enrich that information as soon as they receive it. Or maybe they cannot even become directly a subscriber to these events happening here. And when I'm saying events, like I mentioned, in this architecture, we focus on 4 major events. One of them is like whenever an HCP or HCO or a payer is introduced to the system, typically through the MDM platform, or something is updated and triggering a data change request, a DCR process, typically a CRM application, and so on and so forth. But these data changes or specific entity changes like affiliation of an HCP or a location of an HCP, these information changes or business events are captured through the respective platform immediately or published by the respective platform immediately. Or if there's a governance process happening in the same fashion like I explained in the case of data change request, then we capture this data change request in the same fashion so that MDM stewards can easily be aware, be notified about this change request coming from any other application like CRM, and they can immediately handle that request and resolve and create a survival process so that the rest of the applications can make sure they have the accurate information eventually. So this architecture, as a result, not only providing an event brokering mechanism, but also providing an event mediation layer for the reasons I explained. And in this specific area, from the subscribers' standpoint, you can see that we identified a design pattern called subscriber channel adapter. And I think one of the good things about, I'd like to a little bit give more details in the next slide, is this mediation layer that we created or designed on the Mulesoft side worked perfectly hand in hand with Solace, and actually complemented what Solace was providing as a value, because, like I said, some applications don't have that capability of building a reliable, robust compensation logic, or not good enough to be able to subscribe directly, or for some security reasons, maybe they're not going to be direct subscribers at all. That's why we need to have Mulesoft and Solace work hand in hand in this whole architecture, and also segregate concerns between these different platforms and their capabilities, making sure that this is scalable enough and secure enough. So that being said, I want to a little bit also give you some insights about the advantages of using these platforms together. I explained the reasons why we use them together, but also what happened when we decided to use them together. One thing we were very much concerned in the beginning is, okay, we are just, actually all of them are new technologies for us at Genentech at the beginning. On one side, we have low-code visual development, very good. A lot of connectors, easy to integrate with many of these cloud-based applications. So cool. But when it comes down to, event-driven architecture and event-driven design patterns, we really needed something native to be able to connect to Solace instead of using some, industry standards, because some of the use cases didn't fit in that picture. Again, thanks to Solace and their commitment at that time, because we had a lot of workshops during that time, and the Solace connector, native connector for Mulesoft platform was also available right around the same time. And with our inputs and potentially with some early adopters' inputs, it became really mature enough for us to deliver this solution in the next 8 months after we started using this connector, with even for the first release of the connector. So that's one of the advantages we figured or we realized during this Solace and Mulesoft mix in this architecture. Again, another advantage we actually captured was segregation of concerns. Like, we use Solace in its best place to be used for reliability, guaranteed delivery, for instance, and all that redelivery mechanisms that are in place, so cool things. But at the same time, we defined, this mediation layer to help some applications on board with Solace platform without having to know about Solace details or technology. Also, I think this layering approach provides a flexible and scalable architecture, and this program is the pilot program for the rest of the company. That being said, now we're actually expanding geographically as part of this integrated customer experience initiative, and as a result, we had to make sure that whatever we built would be scalable enough to capture or serve high volumes. Even in the first release that we are running at the moment, we deal with hundreds of thousands of events happening throughout the day. And if we expand, we know that it would be multiples of this. As a result, we need to see that this would be easy for us. And of course, having both platforms as cloud native and being able to easily scale out or scale down, whatever the use case is, this was giving us a peace of mind. In the beginning, and we proved it during our first release and even the second release with increased volumes. Also, these are like practical reasons and practical results, but also we have some additional things that we had to take into account as Roche Group, because we had this enterprise vision of building the composable enterprise. We wanted to make sure whatever we were building in this project was going to be reusable, discoverable, or in other words, conforming these FAIR principles as part of our enterprise architecture strategy, so that anybody else building similar interfaces or trying to, maybe discover and use the same business events in their own landscape will be able to do that, because we established these marketplaces within the company, giving, different consumers or developer communities what they could find and reuse. And I think both platforms, both Solace and Mulesoft, provided that, insight and that level of maturity in terms of giving or treating these integration, components we built as products. Actually, that's the second thing we embraced during this project. Like, we built these events and APIs as a product, and from the very beginning, meaning that we define the schemas, we define the ownership, we define the roadmap, we define all these different aspects when you think about these things as a product. And we publish this actually in our internal integration marketplace, so that now people can find out if there is a business event, like, for instance, an HCP affiliation change, then this affiliation change event is discoverable, and they can easily shop for this new event and become a subscriber to this event through this interaction and through the marketplace. I think that's also another advantage we caught with this, let's say, collaboration between Solace and Mulesoft. In that sense, we ran a lot of POCs with these vendors in the past to make that happen. And as a result, it was not only a success for the program, but also was a success for the overall vision that we are carrying out globally at Roche in terms of API-led and event-driven architectures, and making them as enterprise standards for the rest of the company. Thank you. That's all I have for you. Hope you enjoyed my presentation and inspired for your own use cases as well.